Yeah.
All the pain.
Hey guys, Downgrade Coach of Violation Pods, and welcome back to another trade mode heading into round 10. We're into the double digits now, and another week goes, another week comes, and the trades are more important than ever this round as we are getting one more week closer to the buys. 2 more weeks to go until we hit the all important buys where a few things can be changed up. So that's where I sort of wanted to start this video, just jumping straight into it. You know how we do. I wanted to talk and continue on the discussion that we've been having over the last couple of weeks about around the buys, just dropping little pieces here and there of some information and some theory around the way I attack buys and the way that I think a lot of other people should attack the buy. So, in this video specifically, 2 weeks away, I wanted to sort of go through a piece of something that I like to use, and that is my spreadsheet. Now, this is something that I have shown in the past. If you're a long-term viewer, you would have seen this thing last year. It hasn't really changed a huge amount, but I'll pretty much just quickly go through how I go and plan around the buys. This is my spreadsheet, and this is how I go about it. So, but before I get into it real quick, I just wanted to say that we've now got 7 trades remaining until we got the buys. Obviously, 2 this week, 2 next week, and then we have the 3 heading into round 12. So make every trade count as possible. Now, pretty much number one in terms of what we should be doing at the moment is still monitoring how our team is structuring up. So keep in mind, okay, who is in your team? What buys do they have? Okay, am I heavy in certain areas? Am I heavy in other areas? No, yes. Just ultimately see how you're structuring up. I've said it multiple times over the last couple of weeks. So what I mean by that, and it's pretty easy to show here, is that this is what I mean. So I've got up here is the people that are on the buy, so the teams that are on the buy. Just as an easy reminder, rather than switching back and forth between your phone and stuff, I've just got it nicely written up there. Okay, who's on there? Then here's my team. Okay, who has a buy specifically? Green means premium, red means rookie, yellow means mid price, and then I've got the orange there, which I've only recently included as sort of that underpriced premium, who, they're sort of just there for. They've been there all season, and they are not keepers, but they're also not hurting my team as such at this point in time. So, but they're also not generating cash. So they're sort of there and not hurting me. So, that's pretty much how I structure up. The dark red is people who I'm trading out this week, potentially, and then the blue is who I am potentially looking at bringing in. And then the purple, just don't worry about that too much. That's potentially people who I'm looking at bringing in the next coming week. So, this is pretty much what I mean when I want to look at how I'm structuring up. So I can easily say, okay, I have 7 players on round 12, 4 on round 13, etc., etc. And then I sort of keep a track of what I sort of have here. You don't have to do all this. This is just a formula that I've produced, and is something that helps me keep track of where I want to be. And another thing that I wanted to discuss in this is that when translating this back to sort of the old sort of structure that we used to have, when it used to be 3 rounds of buys, where we had 6, 6 teams on each buy each week, we're sort of struggling to get back to that sort of formula where, we had the 8, 10, 12, which meant, you had 8 players on the round 12 buy that were out, 10 on the round 13, and 12 on the round 14. So that meant when you're heading into the second round of buys, being round 13, it meant you traded out 2 of the round 13 players and then 1 from round 14. So that means you always had 22 players available in your team in all the weeks possible. So when we try and translate that in terms of what we need to do now, it's much simpler, in my opinion. So obviously we have a buy structure of 4-2-4-4-4, so a maximum of 4 teams on each buy, as I can show you there. Now, this is a structure that I work to. I haven't heard too many other people speak about structures, but this is just something I work to. I can not by no chance claim that this is the perfect structure. Like I said, this is just something that I've worked towards, and something that I just helps me feel like I'm working towards something, and it gives me a bit more comfortable. So pretty much it means I want 5 players heading into round 12, 4 into round 13, and then so on and so forth. So it shows that it's slightly on the back, so back-ended, as we always should be, because at the end of the day, as you're progressing through the buys, you can sort of start trading out ahead of time these later guys to then have the ideal amount of players in your team throughout the buys. And looking at this ideal structure, without even making a trade through that entire period, you should have 22 players available each and every week. Now, we obviously know Ruckman here and there, and obviously red dots and stuff like that. That's not always possible. This is under the assumption that you have 30 green dots throughout the entire process, but there's no chance of that ever really happening. I don't think I can even remember the last couple of years where that has happened. So realistically, this is just a guide. It's something that I like to use, but it's just something that I work towards. So I wouldn't worry about this too much. This is something that I like to do as more of like a history of, okay, this is what I went in with, and just sort of keeping track with how I went through with the buy. So that hasn't been updated since last year, I don't believe. So, but I'll move on to the second part of this, which is really the first part. But I could go through. This is pretty much keeps an eye of, okay, who's my targets once their buy is up. So say we're heading into round 13, the round 12 players have now had their buy. Okay, who's the targets that we're targeting in that round? So it's probably a bit backwards because obviously it says round 13 targets. It really should say round 13 buy targets, right? So heading into round 13, these are the guys that we're targeting because they have had their buy, right? So that's, for me, that's a Walsh, Butters, Bont, Trelaw. If you can't read that, that does say Daniel. He is now got a yellow tag next to his name because he's not a premium he's not a premium anymore in my opinion. So he's been demoted. So he will be looking to be out of my team very shortly. So these are the guys that will be targeting through once they've had their buy. So this is just something I like to do. I like to keep track of, okay, who's the people that we're going to be targeting, and then I can start looking through, okay, who's the highest priority out of those sort of guys, based on their price, their run, the fixture, all those sort of things that I like to consider. So yeah, it just helps me sort of start really filling in the next part that I want to talk about, and this is planning out your trades. Now, I've spoken about this a little bit, so now don't look at the numbers too heavily in this because a lot of this hasn't been updated. I haven't filled it in a huge amount, but pretty much it means this is what I'm looking to do on round 12. So ideally, I want to trade out Sullivan, Moraes, and potentially Daniel if he survives that long. And that gives me, a pretty good amount of money that I should be able to get a 950k player of any type, and then get 2 semi-decent rookies in that same time, which hopefully will be green dots and jumping off a red dot in Moraes or a pink dot at the moment, and then, pretty much a dead rookie in a Fino Sullivan. So that's my ideal trade in round 12. Whether it happens or not doesn't hugely matter. It's just something that I want to be planning towards and jumping off these dead guys. And that means that I have the ideal amount of players heading into round 12. I'll probably actually have one less because I'm trading at a Daniel. I'll probably head in with 4 instead of the 5. 4 instead of the 5 that I set in my ideal structure down here. So, yeah, it's just something that I like to do. Round 13, I've got Boxall named in there at the moment, but I'll probably also start filling in some of these other guys. Maybe that's a Long. Does he go at that stage? Because I don't have a huge amount of people that I want to trade out when it comes to round 13. A lot of people may have a Philippou. Whether he sticks around or not, who knows? A Cooper Simpson is another one that a lot of people are trading into this week. He could potentially be another rookie that jumps off at that stage in a couple of weeks' time. And there's a few other guys that you could look at as well. But yeah, you don't want to be... There's probably not a huge amount of guys that you want to jump off when it comes to that round. That's when you can really start planning and start going, okay, where am I heavy? And where can I start jumping off these sort of guys that aren't trading... going super well. So that week I could probably jump off, a closey. Here's a red dot if I just want to get more green dots on as much as possible. Yes, it means I'm probably only going to have, 300k to play with, but if I trade out another mid price and say maybe a long is, maybe that price, that gives me, if that wants to go away, it still gives me enough to potentially get up to a maximum premium in $1.05 million, and then gets 2 basement sort of rookies with the remaining cash that I have. So this is just something that I like to do to start foresighting the trades that I'm going to be looking at. Yes, it doesn't always go to plan because there is, forced trades and things change every single week very, very quickly, but at least give me some sort of guide of what I'm working towards each and every week, and you can be very flexible around that. And I would start to put in some names here and there, like the guy that I was looking at here was a Whitfield. I'll fix it up later. You can't really fill in the rookies because obviously we never know what rookies we're going to have throughout that period. But realistically, there's green dot rookies that are going to be playing throughout the buys. So, and then finally, this is the final piece of the puzzle, and that no, I haven't fully filled it in just yet, but this pretty much tells me exactly what is my team currently looking like if we were to enter the buys tomorrow. So if we were heading into the round 12 buy right now, this is exactly what my team would be prior to trades, obviously. So this is telling me that I'm going to trade out Lindsay and I'm going to get inside of Hooley and Holmes. And these are my 3 red dots potentially. And then obviously you got lots of rookies, mid prices, underpriced premiums, and premiums, obviously. And it's showing me that I'll probably only have the likes of 20 players available in that round currently, just with, red dots and people that are on the buy. So this is something that I like to do. I could take it one step further and go line by line. So, how many defenders am I going to have? How many midfielders, and etc. And that's something that I do typically do later on, probably starting next week, just to really confirm. But I think it's probably easy to do with, particularly the AFL Fantasy by detector. I think this is much easier rather than trying to navigate it between spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are useful, but they're not always the best when it comes to trying to line up these sort of things because it can be a bit finicky. So this is just how I particularly like to do it when I'm looking at, okay, who's in which line on those particular buys. So I like to just keep mental note of that. But that's pretty much about it for when talking about buys. I think I will move on. But yeah, definitely something to think about if you want to start thinking about the buys a bit more seriously. But yeah, I'll move on. So we are talking about trades this week. Now, we'll start with the trade outs as we always do. I'll bring up my trade targets and we'll go from there. So my number 1 trade out target this week is Clayton Oliver. If you still have him throwing around, he looks like he's gone into a bit of a... How should I put this? I don't even know how to politely put this, but pretty much he's not in the right mindset right now where, he had the week off, just needed a bit of a week off just to relax, have a mental break. And he came back, put up a 41, doing a bit of a tagging role. So he doesn't really know what he wants to be doing. He's low on confidence. And ultimately that doesn't leave 2 good fantasy scores. And that means his cash is now plummeting and undoing a lot of that good work that he did start the start of the season. He was up over 100k to start the season. He put up some very decent scores, for the first 2 months of the season before the buy. So he did absolutely nothing wrong. He's just unfortunately fell back into old habits. Now, can't disclose exactly what the old habits are, but mentally, yeah, he's not in the right place. And I think he's just one that you got to jump off now. It just looks like it's unlikely to recover very quickly. I just don't see it going away that quickly, unfortunately. So, and there's every chance that he's going to do another tagging role again this week. Against Lockie Neal because Viney is out again, so that means Oliver may do another job there. So while it didn't win them the game, they were very competitive for 3 quarters in against Hawthorn there. So yeah, I can see him doing a very similar job and dropping a lot more money this week as well. And they do also have a very tough run towards his buy. These 2 particularly, the first and second hardest team in the competition, I think, or second and third. Sydney are coming a bit tougher, and the Lions are just, neutral. St Kilda are okay as well. So, pretty tough there. So, I wouldn't be keeping him for longer. That's why he's my number 1, losing a lot of cash, and you can get him up to a pretty big premium there quite easily. Number 2, I have the rookies, and that's obviously a host of players, your Lindsays, your Davidsons, your Stones, your Clearys, all these guys that are sort of maxing out or potentially looking to lose money. Whoever you can get off of to get up to the player that you're looking for, jump off of them. Now, I guess if I had to sort of rank them, it becomes a bit tricky because it's all very team dependent, and depending if you're looking to field certain players, I think we've got a pretty big stretch of how many people are fielding rookies at this stage, where some teams are fielding 4 rookies and some people are only fielding 2 or something like that. So if I had to sort of rank them, I'd be getting Lindsay off field or trading him. Absolutely. If you're one of those people that still have 3 or more rookies, I'd still be keeping Bias at this stage. I think he's very fieldable, particularly in the next sort of 4 weeks. I think he's going to bounce back quite well. Obviously, there's some concern that he does get dropped at some stage with Sydney losing, but I think that's very common against all the rookies. He's a more mature age. I don't think he's done anything particularly wrong, so I think he can definitely have some pretty big games in the coming weeks as well. So in my team specifically, I'll be holding him just because I want to back him, particularly next week. That's a very good matchup. I think he goes well, and I think I'll be holding him through to that round 14 particularly. Lindsay, I think, is number 1. I think if you have him on field, you need to get him off, so he is definitely one I'd be jumping off of. Connor Stone isn't hurting you because he isn't named. Oh, sorry, he isn't. He's just a red dot, so he's not losing money, so he's not absolutely must. Davidson is well up there because he did drop a 62 and is starting to drop coin. Just have Essendon this week, so if you're really relying on people on field, then I don't mind you keeping him, but he is slowly starting to leak coin now, and he's got plenty of money on his head, so yeah, he can go. Cleary is a bit of a tough one. Obviously, dropped a game again, just with a poor performance from the whole team theoretically. So I could definitely see him having a bit of a bounce back week with another 60 or an 80 against Carlton. So I don't think he's absolutely must go. He's definitely not one that's in my plans, but definitely would be someone I look at next week if he doesn't perform again, as he starts to leak some coin. If he drops another low score, Murphy Reed needs to go. He's now leaking a lot of coins, so he'd be up there quite high for 18k last week. Lawler, again, falls in that category as if you need him on field, he can stay. Good matchup against North. Could go well, but otherwise he's got plenty of money on his head. He could definitely go and has a potential to drop a lower score and start losing coin, but not an absolute must. Finn O'Sullivan, he doesn't have a huge amount of money on his head anyway to lose, so I'm not super concerned. Richmond this week could go okay, so maybe worth just keeping him there. I don't think you can get up to him much, but yeah, that's probably where I finish it with the rookies. Caleb Daniel is a very interesting topic of discussion for me because again, it comes down to team dependence. I'd try and encourage people that are having rookies on field. The 3 or more is the argument. Is if your rookies on field are your Ashcroft and maybe a Zach Reed, then I would say, okay, go for it. Caleb Daniel can be gone. But if you're looking at fielding, a Trainer or a Bice or a Lindsay or any other sort of rookie, then I'd be hesitant to jump off at Daniel, particularly this week because he does have Richmond. He could definitely put up, a solid 80, and I think you're just going to get a much better points upgrade this week, particularly from a rookie to another, whether it's a premium or a mid-pricer. I think you're just going to get the upgrades on field, the points upgrade on field there, much better than what a Caleb Daniel is going to get you from a Daniel maybe to the likes of a Martin as such. I just don't think the points upgrade is going to be there. Even though I don't think he's one that we want to keep, and I definitely think he's part of the trade out targets, is probably just not this week for my team specifically, but for a lot of other teams that are in a much better position, definitely worthwhile jumping off him if he is the worst sort of player in your team. So yeah, don't mind him there. Collingwood next week is definitely an interesting discussion. He may be more worthwhile because that is obviously a much tougher matchup. I probably don't need to even elaborate too much on the fact that Shees was back there taking a lot of his points, and I think I heard an interesting stat that I think it was like 38% of his fantasy scores in the last 3 weeks is like from kickouts. So he's obviously taking a lot of kickouts at the moment. Slowly reducing it week on week, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes this week. But yeah, that is an alarming stat that he's just not getting the transition ball nearly as much, with the likes of Sheasel back there being the main target for the distribution. So obviously huge concerns, and he does need to go. It's just a matter of jumping off him at the right time. And you could argue now's the right time. He's dropping a huge amount of cash with 32k last week, break even of 112. I just think there's a potential that he puts up a decent score this week and minimizes that cash generation. And I'm willing to take that hit of potentially 20k in price change to get the points on field upgrade this week. So that's just my opinion. You may have a different opinion on that, and I wouldn't stop you from jumping off him. Number 4, I had Jane Short. Now, this has sort of changed a little bit with the news that has come out that says that he should be good to go. He does have to go through a bit of a test to make sure that knee's all good, but pretty much all it was is that he had a bit of knee complaint, and they just took a very cautionary approach to it, just to be like, all right, we'll rest you for 1 week and see how you go next week. So he should be back this week, and they're confident that he plays. And I don't think he's the one that you absolutely need to jump off of. He hasn't been amazing this season, but, averaging 88, he's by far not the worst player in your team, and he's not really losing a huge amount of coin. And yeah, I don't think he's going to be one that is going to get, again, that points upgrade on field. It's not going to be massively worth it. The only scenario I would say that you could probably jump off of him is maybe if you're doing a double sideways sort of move, is if you're maybe doing a Caleb Daniel and a Jaden Short, and maybe you have an extra 200-300k in the bank. Maybe you're getting up going from a short to the likes of a Holmes. It's only costing you 30k, and maybe you're going from a Daniel maybe to a Nick Martin, or another maybe even a Chad Warner. That could be another definite option. That's probably only going to cost you 80-90k to do both of those upgrades, where you're going to have 2 guys that you're going to have for a long period of the remainder of the season. Chad Warner is speculative whether you want to keep him for the remainder of the season. Maybe the better argument is if you can go up to a Nick Martin, that would cost you probably around 200k overall. But if you have that 200k, then you definitely have 2 guys that you're going to be confident with for keeping for the remainder of the year, rather than a Jaden Short and what's his name, Daniel instead. And Daniel obviously losing coin, and potentially going to make coin with the likes of Holmes. Martin is speculative. You're not really using him for cash generation. So that's probably the only scenario I'd be jumping off of Jaden Short, is if you really want to do a big fix up, and you're maybe not too confident on the rookies that we're looking at this week, or maybe you already have the one that a lot of people are looking at this week. Who knows? So yeah, there's that. Alrighty, so that is my trade at targets. Now, I'll just quickly scan through the list here of anyone else that we should be looking at. I pretty much spoke about all these guys. Sanders should have been gone last week. Meek is an unfortunate one. Obviously, he is being rested this week, and obviously has been quite poor in the last 2 weeks anyway. So, yeah, it's probably a great time to jump off of him. It's not going to cost you a huge amount to get him up to the likes of a Cherry, 150k, I think it would roughly be. So, yeah, it's definitely a pretty good move. Husway, if you're in the same boat as myself, definitely need to jump off him. From what I've heard, I did actually think about holding him. His break-even is not hugely high, and I definitely could see him getting that. But from what I've heard, I don't think he actually got on a plane to go to Darwin, so it looks like he has been dropped. So that obviously means he needs to be traded out at that highly priced. So he'll be going for me. Plays the Thursday night, which is a bit unfortunate to be having a locked out trade so early on, but it just is what it is for taking on the risk there. So that's just fantasy. Luke Trainer can go if he's your worst player again. He's a very buildable score, still a low break even of 45, so he's generating some cash. But yeah, there's always a chance that he does drop a lower score. Besides that, I think that's pretty much it. People trading at Nick Dacos is pretty funny. But yeah, I'll move on now. I've been going on for long enough already. So now we'll move on to the trading targets, and as I'll do, I'll go through line by line. I'll start with the defenders this week because there is so many players that we need to discuss, which is, yeah, I think a lot of people are shopping in this area, so I want to spend the most time in this category. So might as well hit it straight on the head. So, removing that, I will bring up my top 5 trade-in targets for this round for defenders. So, number 1 is Harry Sheezel for me. If you do not have Harry Sheezel right now, he is still the number 1 target for me because he has Richmond this week, and it should be a walk-up 130 for him. I don't see a world where he is having a bad performance in this game. Richmond are by far one of the easiest matchups for any position, particularly for kicking designated defenders. Bloody hell, if I can get that out. So he should have a very good game. He easily goes at 120 as a halfback defender, and that's what his role is at the moment. So yeah, he should be a massive one on your target. I don't think I need to elaborate on that too much more. He's still cheap for what he is potentially able to go at as well. Number 2, I had Nasiah Wangani Malera, who was right there. I don't know why I need to type his name in. He is just going at a very good tick right now. Only dropped below 100 twice so far this season. By far their best ball user. Up against West Coast is a slight concern. I will say that because West Coast at Optus have been a little bit of a tricky matchup, particularly for these designated defender players. I think when I went back and looked at the past 4 games that they've had at Optus, it's just, I don't think I've seen a defender go over the likes of 90. So that probably gives you a little bit of sign that there's a potential that he has a bit of a poorer game. But I think Nasiah works very hard and he actually gets quite high up the ground. He's not one of these halfback defenders that just stays very deep. He actually gets quite far up the ground and even pushes into the forward 50 at some stages. So I wouldn't be surprised to still see him have a very good game, get 10 plus marks and, have 30 plus disposals. So, and even kick a goal. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I think he's one that you want to jump on. Still at a very good price point, and he has obviously a very good run to the buys if I show you that as well. St Kilda, so West Coast neutral matchup, but then Gold Coast and Melbourne. Obviously, the round 13 bye is obviously a very valuable position to be in as well. So make that into your buy planning there. So that's number 2. Zorko makes it at number 3. And these last 3 is where I struggled a little bit to really put them in this spot, but I sort of went a bit safety here. Is that I probably feel that Zorko is a bit more stable in this top sort of 6 defender line. These past 3 games have been amazing. Obviously, good matchups. He obviously comes into a very good matchup this week, particularly as well. So you're probably going to expect a bit of a pop score. So I think he's a great trade-in target. The only concerns I have is obviously the likes of Kitty Coleman. I've spoken about it multiple times over the last weeks. What does that do to his role? I'm still not super concerned just yet that the fact that I would stop people trading him in, but there's obviously that concern of, there's potential that he comes back into the side and that does change Zorko's role at some stage. So yeah, there's always that concern. But here's my number 3. Obviously, good pop, get a bit of a pop score from him, and obviously he's maybe due for a rest at some stage, but the buys are coming up. He looks fit and healthy and seems to be running out games very well. So I wouldn't stop anyone from trading him in. Now, these last 2 particularly, I went back and forth all week. If you saw my team review video, I was looking at trading in Jack Sinclair. I have sort of backtracked that a little bit, and I won't say that I've changed my thought process. I do still think Jack Sinclair is a very good trade-in target. Now, I obviously spoke about the West Coast matchup potentially being a bit of a fool's gold, if you will. That it's not as good as it would seem on paper, because you expect West Coast to be a very good matchup, but at Optus they are a bit tricky. So I could see him have a pretty good game here, and obviously the round 13 was another huge factor while I was looking at him, particularly to be a round 13 play in my midfield. And I'm not saying I won't potentially trade him in next week. There's every chance that still happens. Obviously, a very good price tag. The defender midfield status is very nice. Higher break even than what I'd absolutely love, but I still think he's a great trade-in target. And I do think he's getting a bit of a bad rap. Sorry. for his scoring output so far this season. If you actually look at who's his matchups have been, they've been pretty tough. You know, Adelaide Crows started as a very tough matchup to start the season, dropped to 90 in what was an okay game. You got to think that he had an injury coming into the season as well, so he was only just made it ready to go for round one. Had some pretty two good matchups where he went 114, 134. Port Adelaide, very tough matchup. Same with GWS and the Western Bulldogs. Western Bulldogs have been the hardest matchup so far this season. And you could only probably argue the last three where they haven't been particularly super hard matchups, but a 95, and that strange 61 was an anomaly realistically where they only kicked three behinds and the ball didn't live in their defensive half a huge amount because St Kilda ended up winning that game and they did a lot of the attacking. So that's probably the only outlier I will say that's unfortunate. Besides that, if you look at his decent matchups, he's got 95, 95, 134, and 114. Now that's roughly averaging, I didn't actually do the calculations, but say 100, 105 around that. So I do think he's got a bit of a bad rap. For someone that's priced around that 92 mark, it definitely has a bit of value. So I expect him to bounce back and have a pretty big back half of the season. So he's definitely someone I'm still looking at trading in at some stage, even though it may not be this week particularly. But Max Holmes slots in at number 5, and I guess my argument why he's down at there number 5 is just because of the matchups that he's having to face in the next 2 weeks. Ideally, I'd like to wait 2 more weeks and then I pick him up when he plays against West Coast, and he goes into this nicer form of run heading into his bye. Even after the bye is pretty juicy as well. It's probably easy to show you in here, particularly. If I go Geelong, so he's got 2 harder matchups this week, but then he goes West Coast, Suns, Essendon, Brisbane Lions, Richmond, and then so for onward for the rest of the season. So only having 2 tougher matchups for the remainder of the season from that point onwards. So that's my ideal. I would love to pick him up then, but just with the way my trades are having to sort of line up, particularly this week, that I may pick him up just this week and just, see how it goes. He may pop a bit of a good score against Port Adelaide, but probably in my head probably doesn't. So yeah, I think he's well worth it there. Obviously super cheap, 902k, lower break even, so more than likely going to go up a little bit in coin this week if he can do a very decent score. But very similar reasoning. He's sort of a bit backwards in the sense that he's had some decent matchups, the likes of St Kilda and Melbourne, both very easy matchups, but dropped some very low scores, which is what concerns me the most, and probably why I have a bit more confidence that a Jack Sinclair is going to put up much more consistent scores for you and potentially presents more value than the likes of Max Holmes. So that's why his categorized high for me. So hopefully that's what you can get. Obviously he's had 5 scores below 80 so far this season, with only 4 above 80, which all sort of coincide with a 118, a 133, a 119, and a 106. So very up and down, huge roller coaster. So I'm expecting it to continue that way. So yeah, that's why he's at number 5. The defender I didn't talk about, obviously part of the top 6 is obviously the likes of Lachie Whitfield. He didn't make my top 5 this week, just particularly the fact that I probably expect him to get a bit tagged this week. We saw Fremantle use Wagner as a tagging option last week, and that was on Nick Dacos. So I do potentially see Wagner go to the likes of Whitfield this week, just in probably his more natural position. So we'll see if that happens, and if not. But he's also super expensive when we have all these other value guys. Max Holmes, Sinclair, and even Zorko to some extent is a value option. So I think just target value while you can. But I still like him as an option. Just this week I do have some concerns. So yeah, keep that in mind. A couple of defenders that I wanted to talk about, because there is a plethora of options that we need to talk about. Kitty Coleman, obviously he has now played 2 games in the VFL, so there's every chance that he starts to come back into the side. Now, I don't absolutely hate him as a trade-in target if you're struggling for coin this week, or you're looking to get a bit creative, where maybe you're not too keen on the rookies that we're targeting. Maybe you already have the likes of Sado Hooley, or maybe a Cooper Simpson. maybe, maybe not, then maybe you can try and find a way to have that extra bit of coin to go up to a Kitty Coleman and get that sort of mini upgrade and take the bit of a risk that he could go well this week, particularly if he's coming up against Melbourne. He could definitely have a big pop score if he's playing the right role and isn't getting managed a huge amount. So there is a bit of risk to it, but I have a lot more confidence that he is so cheap that the risk is quite minimal for what we know he can do in a very similar role to what we expect him to have. Now, there's no certainty that he plays this week. I haven't heard anything, but it's definitely something that I'm monitoring quite heavily. So keep him in mind. It's just something that I've personally toyed around with if he was to be named. Because the other thing that I'm trying to keep in mind is that in the next player that I'm particularly talking about is Callum Mills. Now, Callum Mills is a tester player this week, and there's every chance that he also comes back into the AFL side this week and plays. Now, they haven't confirmed whether he's going to be playing in the VFL or the AFL just yet, but he has to go through fitness, and fingers crossed he gets through it. But there's every chance when it comes to next week, we could be targeting likes of Kitty Coleman, Mills, and the likes of Philippou all in the same week. So, in my thought process is, if that's the potential, if teams come out and all three of them are named in the AFL teams, and I have concerns that I want to try and there's a potential that I could need to jump on all three of them next week, there's a chance that I just jump on one of them this week, and that's probably where I lean to picking up Kitty Coleman. So I've played around with some of my trades, and I've managed a way to see that if the teams go the way that I think they potentially could go, then there's a world that I could pick up the likes of Kitty Coleman this week and take the risk, and then have another look at the likes of Mills and a Philippou. So that's just what I'm thinking. But exaggerating on Mills a little bit again. He is up against Carlton, so probably not a huge matchup, but there's always obviously the concerns that he may get managed a fair bit, coming off of that fresh injury with, I think it was a foot, I always forget. There's so many injuries that go around. But yeah, obviously he's been a week by week procedure every single week. So yeah, we'll see how that sort of eventuates. This is probably one I wouldn't jump on this week, just with his more expensive price tag. He's more chance of dropping coin rather than actually gaining coin for you. So yeah, it's definitely one I want to have a look at, but keeping in mind that you may look to trade him in the next couple of weeks. CJ is a Hawks player, and he has been absolutely flying in the last 2 weeks, particularly. And for good reason, he has become a pretty big target for those that are struggling a little bit in coin. In 600k, break even at 12, he could definitely make you some very decent coin. Now, my thought process with him being a Hawks man is I don't see it lasting. Now, I love CJ. I think he's a great player, but he does have moments where his ball use does let him down. And, Sam Mitchell isn't blind to this. I don't think his speed and agility outweighs his ball use. We still need good ball uses off halfback. So he is no stranger to subbing him out. I can't remember if that 27% was subbed out, but I think he's definitely been subbed out so far this season that wasn't injury related. He is definitely a bit of a whipping boy when things aren't going his way and maybe they're not getting the distribution off halfback they're looking for. Then there's every chance that he can be subbed out quite quickly if he's not getting it right. So while he's been good in the last 2 weeks, and I will say there have been 2 very friendly matchups where Hawks have been on top for majority of the game. So yeah, I just don't see that continuing, particularly with some tougher matchups coming. I just don't see him getting the space and the marks and the disposals that we're sort of looking for. So this is an area that I wouldn't particularly be playing with unless I'm absolutely desperate. I think there's still better options that you could look at, particularly if the likes of Kitty Coleman is named. Again, I'd probably go there before the likes of going to CJ. It is a creative way to go to if you're looking for cash generation. You're really trying to catch up with that cash generation side of things, and maybe that's a play. But for me, I don't think I could go in this area. He's too much of a whipping boy for me, and he has been shown to not be part of their best 22 for long. I will also say that they have a few players coming back while they also are managing a few. So, the likes of Scrimshaw coming back, Amon should be back this week as well. But also Impey is potentially, he is not being played this week because he's got a child on the way. So his job security should be fine this week, but there's no telling that, if next week he may not be in the side because of a poor performance, because I am expecting a bit of a loss for Hawthorn this week against the Gold Coast Suns. So I'd be very careful, but yeah, I'm not ruling it out as a possibility for a lot of people. There's that one. Last person I wanted to quickly talk about was Miles Bergman, and we all know I love Miles Bergman. I started him this year. Obviously had him for, the first 6 rounds or so. Yeah, 6 rounds, and obviously traded him out recently. I love what he was able to do last week, and I've always been a firm believer that he is going to be a very good scorer if he is given the opportunity in the midfield. Now, I never thought it would be part of his power days, because, power have such a strong midfield mix already with, Jason Francis, Butters, Rosie was in there. Then you got Drew and Wines. They already have a very big core midfield group that I didn't think Bergman was going to be a possibility to get in there. But with him being potentially out on contract, he's potentially being traded this year. I can see why they've thrown him in there a little bit. It was also a bit of a tagging role. It was a good opportunity to see how it'd go. And I think he absolutely thrived. 23 disposals, 5 marks, and 8 tackles. I'd very, very similarly compare him to the likes of a Jordan Dawson type midfielder, maybe even a Josh Dunkley. All those guys have the same sort of attributes where they're strong tacklers, but they're also really good overhead, very strong body, bigger frame. I just see him in that sort of mold, and I do think he can be a very good fantasy scorer. So this is one I'm heavily looking at. I'm probably not brave enough to jump in this week unless, we got confirmation that he's going to be playing in the midfield again, because it is super risky if he goes back to that half-back role and he drops these 30s and 40s like he was doing a couple of weeks ago when I owned him. So I'm probably not brave enough to jump on this week without confirmation, but it's definitely something that I'm hugely weighing up because I would absolutely love it. The other thing is the round 12 buy, I think is something I'm not willing to jump on, just with prioritizing my buy structure at the moment. Even though it's looking fairly healthy, it's not something that I'm willing to compromise for a player like this just yet, without confirmation. So I love him as a player, but I'm not super keen on the opportunity just yet without seeing a bit more. One game sample is very little, and it could have just been a game-based scenario where it was just tag Dawson. Do I see him doing a bit of tagging job this week? I don't think they need a bigger body like him to go on the likes of a Max Holmes or a Bailey Smith. I think they'll be fine to run with someone else with on those two. So I don't know if I see him in the midfield this week is what I'm trying to get at. So I'm not super keen on it, but I wouldn't stop anyone from going there. Like I said, I love him to pieces, and I think he can be a very good fantasy player and someone I'm hugely looking forward to when it comes to potentially him being traded. I already think 1 foot's at the door for him. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking at him come next year if he goes to a better team. But that is it for the defenders for this week. I already spent so much time, but I'll quickly just scan through the remainder of this list. I already spoke about a huge amount of these players. I wouldn't be trading in Zach Reed this week. Don't be trading in Lewis Hayes because he is done for the season. I will speak about the rookie downgrades very shortly. Luke Ryan I wouldn't be looking at, but yeah, this is all getting very, very unique here, so I wouldn't bother going any further than that. So now I'll jump into the midfielders line, quickly tipping them off. I don't think a huge amount of people are looking here, but Tom Green is my number one for obvious reasons. With the coming off a 133, showed a bit of a ceiling. Obviously, a very decent run up to his buy. Round 16 buy is pretty hard to come by if you don't have the likes of a Dunkley already. So I think he's just one you can easily jump on. So yeah, he's just an obvious one. The only caveat I'll say with that is potentially the fact that the likes of Toby Bedford wasn't playing in that game, so that could have been a bit of a factor why he had a bit of a more of a pop score there. Obviously, while Toby Bedford isn't a fantasy fiend by any means of stretch of imagination, he does a lot of the grunt work in there by, doing a lot of defensive work for them, being that bit of a accountable defender. Also uses his speed and gets a fair few marks on the outside. So it looks like the likes of Tom Green was able to do that a bit more on the weekend. We're getting 7 marks, which was his season high so far, and also got 4 tackles, which is a bit above his average so far this season. So I'm a little bit concerned by that, but I still think he's a great target nonetheless. At a very good price, at that low $1 million price. So yeah, I don't mind him there as a trading target. Number 2 is Josh Dunkley. Just old reliable, super consistent, just scraped to 111 in what wasn't a perfect game for him. He got burnt a fair few times on the outside, didn't get as many marks as what you'd expect, and just got there through, a lot of disposals and tackles in the end of the day. Has a really good spread of his stats realistically. So he has multiple avenues of scoring, which means he's going to be a super consistent player. Good matchup this week and not too bad of a run through to his bye realistically as well. So if you have the additional cash, I'd probably go with Dunkley over Green in my opinion. But I think the value of Green is also quite tasty, even though it's only 40k. Could definitely be something that leads you down the right path instead. So consider that. Zach Merritt, another great option. Again, round 16 buy player. Coming up against a very good matchup very shortly. So not particularly this week. Western Bulldogs are the toughest matchup for any player, particularly in the match. I can show you that here. So Western Bulldogs for midfielders is negative 10 points over the last 5 games. So the toughest matchup for inside mids so far in the last 5 weeks. So not a particularly good matchup this week, but his run from that point onwards is pretty phenomenal. So I'd definitely be looking at that as an opportunity. So yeah, definitely worthwhile jumping on him. I think he's dropped below. He's cheaper than Dunkley now, but it does have a super high break even. But I wouldn't be expecting him to get too much cheaper than what he is already. So definitely a decent option. Then I've gone with a few cheaper options in the likes of Jack Steele. Obviously had the 2 back-to-back tons in the last 2 weeks, and even before that was a 93. Just looks like he's got his mojo back. Looks like he's fit and healthy, getting a lot of tackles, spreading for more marks as well. So yeah, I expect him to have a pretty good game against the West Coast Eagles, and then the run to the bye. Again, round 13 bye is very useful. But the only thing why I have him so low is he's not a keeper, in my opinion. I don't see him getting up to that 105, 110 average that we've seen in the past. So yeah, I don't see him staying in your side for super long. He's more of that. He'll do his best I can get up to in that price range as a midfielder, and he can be someone I can run for 6 to 8 weeks until we get into the sort of luxury season, and I can trade him up from there. So I don't mind him as an option there. Peatling is my number 5. Just another option at a cheaper price, below 800k. But the reason he is there at number 5, not above the likes of Jack Steele, even though he does probably present more cash generation purposes, is that it's very short term. Crouch is only out for 3 to 5 weeks still, so it potentially is only a 3-week play, but it could be out to a 5-week play, and it could even be beyond that. Like, I'm not saying that once Crouch comes back into the side, it's absolutely done for Peatling. There's every chance that he stays in that midfield because he's a very good midfielder. He's a strong body in there. He loves a tackle. He runs hard and he's a good burst of pace. So I'd probably prefer him over the likes of a Saligo in there instead. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him remain in that midfield for a long period of time. But his cash generation over the next 3 weeks could be very vital. I could see him getting closer to that 900, 950k price tag quite quickly with some decent scores. I will say though, he does have some tougher matchups. But Collingwood this week, the second toughest matchup so far this season. West Coast obviously super easy matchup. Don't need to question that. Then the next 3 after that are neutral to hard matchups as well. So not saying he won't go well. Obviously, he sort of thrives a little bit when it comes to tougher matchups with the 117 against the 3rd toughest matchup for the season against Port Adelaide. But that was heavily relying on 12 tackles. So yeah, I don't hate him as an option. So if he's the best you can get up to, I don't mind that there. I'll quickly just scan through a couple other options in the midfield. A lot of it is DPP because we do have so much DPP action already. Bontempelli, again, he's still a very decent option, but still quite expensive for mine for what he's doing at the moment. Into 12 round. Well, the round 12 buy is still a huge factor. I'm still trying to put my top five out there for the majority of coaches out there. I think a lot of people are heavy on the round 12 buy, so I'm trying not to encourage people to jump on these type of players. But if he suits your buy structure and you're not super heavy in there, I would absolutely encourage you to go there, because he just looks like he's in Brownlow Bond form at the moment, and he's just doing particularly well. Lots of shots on goal every single week, and Bulldogs are flying, so yeah, he's just flying as well. This is getting a bit unique, so I will move on to the Ruckman, which will be super quick because we all know what we're doing. Oops, skipping ahead a bit there. So my Ruckman this week, who you're trading in, I've got Cherry still at number one. If you can get up to him, he has the Richmond Tigers this week, so he will have a very good matchup potentially. So he may feature in my captains tomorrow if you stay tuned for that. But yeah, expecting a very good score from him. He's gone for his last four games have been above 116, which just shows you he's a super consistent coach. Sorry, super consistent Ruckman. No matter the matchup, he's had some tougher ones in there. He's had some neutral ones in there. So yeah, you can only imagine what he can do when he comes up against an easy opponent. So that's this week particularly. So expecting a pretty decent score from him. He's priced at just over $1 million. So if you can jump on him now, he won't be much cheaper for much longer. So I don't hate that. But I will say, if you have a TDK, there has been some news that has recently dropped as early a couple of hours ago that he is potentially going to be managed, or not managed. Sorry, he's in some doubt for this weekend's game with an injury. So stay tuned for that. What happens with him? He potentially could be a late out, but we'll know that Friday night. So that's a positive for all those coaches that still have him. But even then, still pretty easy sideways from a TDK to a Cherry, costing about 150k. So yeah, that's where I'd be jumping at, with a better run that I can probably show you here instead. So Richmond, Collingwood, the bye, the West Coast, Fremantle, Hawthorn. Just by far the easiest run on the way home. Whereas probably my argument for Royal Marshall being at number two, while this week is very good, but the weeks following is quite tricky. So I'd be careful with that you may not get the value that you're looking for. But he's starting to show a lot more form, particularly last week. So yeah, definitely don't mind him as another trade-in. If you're really struggling for cash, then you could go to Marshall. Max Gawn's still at number three, just because I don't think you're going there with how expensive he is, even though he is travelling super well. Also looking at his run of tough games, Brisbane is typically a tough matchup, so I wouldn't be looking at that too much. Grundy can be tough as well. Decent run through the middle, but then that run is particularly worrisome. So yeah, there's potential that the more advanced coaches, or the coaches that are in a better position where they're already in luxury trade season, that they could be jumping off the likes of a Max Gawn then. So yeah, just keep that in mind when it comes to that sort of period. It's something I've definitely looked at, but hopefully I'm in that position as well. But yeah, we'll see how we get there. But yeah, I just think Cherry, Marshall, then Gawn at this stage, and I wouldn't be looking at too many other players at this stage. We will move on to the forwards and quickly finish off this video. I've already nearly gone for an hour, so I want to try and get this done as quick as possible. Okay, my number one trading target for forwards is Nick Martin. Now, my argument for Nick Martin, even though he hasn't changed a huge amount in cash from a few weeks ago, he is still under $1 million, and I think the fact that he has around 16 buy, he has the forward defender flexibility is going to be super useful when it comes to the buys. So you'll be able to flick him backwards and forwards depending on where you need him each and every week going through the buys, and then obviously the last round you'll be without him, but that won't be too much of a concern. So I think he's a really good option. Even though he has a tougher opponent this week against Western Bulldogs, they haven't been super tough for wingmen specifically, but I'm particularly looking at the run he has after that. He goes into Richmond, Brisbane Lions, Carlton, Geelong, Fremantle, then the bye. So he has a very strong month in a bit of footy. Even post that, he has a very strong month of footy. So here's one that I'll be jumping on, and I think he'll be a keeper for the remainder of the year. And that's I hope to jump on him this next week. I would love to jump on him this week, but I just think I think with the way my trades are at the moment, I don't have the funds to get up to him. So there's that. That's why I think he's number one, even at the elevated price tag. I still have the likes of Chad Warner at number 2, even though he hasn't been the greatest in the last 2 weeks with a couple back-to-back 80s. I still think the run is amazing. I think the round 14 buy is probably going a little bit under the radar for a lot of people, just because I showed you my spreadsheet before. I didn't have a huge amount of round 14 targets when it comes to premiums. You know, I think Nick Dacos is sort of the only one, and then we have a lot of these other underpriced premiums like your Shorts, your Roberts and stuff like that are in there. So I don't mind him being in that, and you know, you keep him through the buys as a bit of a premium option to balance out your buys. He's also the cheapest option that you're going to get as a forward target, and definitely someone that you could run, and he could definitely put up a pop score as we have seen in the past. So yeah, I don't mind him as a trading target, so he slots in there at number 2. I still have Matt Kennedy at number 3, even at his elevated price tag. Just look at what he's done in the last month of footy. He is just absolutely flying at the moment, and he doesn't look like he is moving out of that midfield at any stage at this time. He's also moving forward a little bit as well with Bont back. He's getting forward, getting creative, and he's also using his big body and getting a fair few marks in there. So Bulldogs are flying, and I think it relies on this man for a bit of the time. So yeah, I think he's a great target, and there's a shout that he's going to be part of the top 6 forwards for the remainder of the year. So definitely going to be part of that blanket. It's just whether his role does eventually change, which I do have concerns about when the likes of a Liberatore particularly comes back. No, a Trelaw comes back. Sorry, I get them confused all the time. So his role may change, but for what he's been doing, he's generating cash at the moment. Good matchups in the next couple of weeks as well. Round 12 buy is the only concern if it doesn't fit your buy structure. Christian Petrarca's number 4. Obviously dropped a bit of a lower one with a 92 with the tougher matchups, and that's what I probably expect to see him continue to do over the next sort of month of footy with some tougher matchups coming. You know, Brisbane Lions, Sydney, both tougher. Then obviously these two are very tough as well. So he's down there at number 4 with just more with a higher price tag. Is the most expensive. The second most expensive of these top 5 guys. So yeah, he's just there at number 4, just with some lower expectations over the next month. So yeah, I think we've missed the boat on that one. And then I threw in Mateus Philippou at number 5 again. While he didn't perform the way that we expected him to go last week, didn't play any CBAs at all, he still put up a very decent score of 73 and didn't lose cash. He actually gained 6k. So he's definitely someone that I want to monitor. I could definitely see him be integrated into that midfield as early as this week. So a Brave coach definitely could have jumped on last week. If not, could be jumping on this week. If you maybe jumping off 2 red dots and you can get up to him as a bit of an upgrade on field, then I don't absolutely hate it, because I could definitely see him going extremely well this week if he was to be included in the midfield. So I don't mind him as an option. Obviously, great run, as I said. St Kilda, the buy is also, again, another huge factor. So that is the trade-in targets for this week. I won't probably dive too much deeper into that. Again, I'll actually do the rookies this week, because I did forget to do them last week. But pretty plain and simply, I have gone with Sardo Hooley as number 1. I just feel like he has the best job security of these, particularly the top 2. I factor in Hardiman there at number 3, just because he's a bit more expensive. He's probably at the top of his range of his price bracket at the moment. Just because, yeah, with the job security, I wouldn't be paying as much as expensive as he is. So I'll quickly look at him instead. Where is he? So in terms of Hardiman, I just don't know if his job security is sound. He looks very good in that role back there at the moment, but he's come in for the likes of Zach Fisher and Jackson Archer, who is obviously out with a hamstring injury. Now, Fisher has played in the VFL last week and did perform quite well, so I wouldn't be absolutely surprised to see that with one poor performance from Hardiman, he'd be dropped out, and then obviously a Fisher comes in to replace him. So that's definitely something that I'd be concerned about. So his job security isn't amazing, and paying that 381k isn't something that I'm particularly looking at this week, just because I think this time of the year you really want to try and pay as minimal as possible for rookies, but at the same time you also want to try and get the best job security rookies as we enter the buys, because you want to have 30 green dots going through the buys as best as possible. So he's definitely part of that calculation, but probably on the lower end for me. Cooper Simpson drops in at number 2, just because I had to do a bit more of a deep dive, because I had to find out why he came into the side for what reason, and the only reason I could see is that they dropped the likes of a Josh Draper, who had been performing particularly well, and my concerns with that is obviously one poor performance he could be out. With some tougher matchups, there's definitely a chance that happens, and the fact that a lot of the Fremantle defenders went particularly well. You know, the likes of Jordan Clark went 130, and Luke Ryan I think went 120. So he would have got a bit of a bump in there as well. So there's an argument to say he's probably he scored 20 points more than what he should have. Because if you compare his scores compared to the likes of the role he replaced in a Josh Draper was only averaging 40 or something like that. So I don't know if his scoring potential is as good as what he showed on the weekend, particularly. So for that reason and the job security concerns, I have dropped him at number 2. I still think he's a great option, but yeah, I wouldn't be absolutely confident that he's going to be one that stays for a long period of time. Whereas I think I have the greatest confidence that Sado Hooley, now that he's got his opportunity to play out full games, particularly with the likes of Harrison Jones, out with that ankle injury for another 3 weeks, particularly with that dislocated ankle, then he's got this role locked up as a wingman for the next 3 weeks particularly, and there's every chance that he could stay in the side then, because I think he does provide a lot more than what Jones does out there. So fingers crossed that comes true, because I am looking at bringing him in this week. Has the lowest break even, going up a huge amount of coins, so I just think he is the number 1 trading target. Round 16 as well, he's going to have an ample amount of opportunity through that period of time to generate the most amount of cash, and with the best scoring potential of the lot, he's just easily the number 1 trading target for me. So that is the rookies there. Now I'll finish off the video quickly just with my top 5 trading targets overall. Now that is pretty much, I have Shees at number 1. I think he's still a must-have in my eyes. He's going to put up a massive score this week. I've got Nick Martin at number 2, just really setting himself up the buys. He's a good price, still under $1 million, and his run coming up, you might as well jump on this week. Sardar Hooley comes in at number 3, just with being the best rookie available, and rookies are pretty vital at the moment with the poor cash generation we have in our teams. We've got to be trying to prioritize them as best possible. Then I sort of filled it in with Tom Green and Nasiah Wanganeen-Milura at 4 and 5 there. So that is my top 5. Quickly looking at what my trades are going to be. I didn't actually do them before this video, but pretty much it is Henry Hustwaite out, and it looks like he is named as an emergency. He was dropped. I haven't looked at the teams just yet. And obviously the likes of Lindsay, and I am looking to go with Holmes, and then a Saad El Houli as my trade-in targets so far. So that's probably what my team's looking for, just getting that nice upgrade from sort of a mid-pricer to a premium, and then obviously a sidewaysing a rookie to another rookie generating cash. And this is sort of how I'll structure up this week, particularly just with the 3 rookie defenders back there. Fingers crossed Jaden Short gets up, and I'll probably look to, just in case that does go a bit pear-shaped, I'll have the likes of Sardar Hooley as my emergency back there, if that was to go a bit pear-shaped. So yeah, that's my trade-in targets. My final thoughts before I finish off the video is just look at how your team is structured up this week. I know a lot of players are playing, particularly on the Sunday games. So for my team particularly, I have 11 players on field that will be playing in the final 3 games of the round. So that just opens up a lot of possibilities of, you know, subs, laid outs, injuries, whatnot, all those sort of issues. Even captain options, so you got to look at looping options. Obviously, there's a lot of the captain options that we'll be looking at tomorrow that play on the Sunday. So you're going to look at your looping options, how that's going to work here and there. So definitely consider that. I just think it's important to notify that, you know, you probably will get off to a bit of a slower start this week with a bit more of a unique teams getting a head start this week with not many people playing. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. But that is it for today's video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Hopefully you got some advice out of this. But please leave a like, subscribe, do all those great things as you guys always do. I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing at the moment. But yeah, if you have any questions, drop them below in the comment section there. I'll try my best to answer as many questions as I can before tomorrow night's teams. Besides that, if you want a personal question answered, you can go to my QU link below, and you can get team reviews and stuff like that there. That is a pretty good service. Besides that, otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers, guys.